Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of That Early Childhood Nerd. I'm Heather Burnt Santy, and very glad to have Richard Cohen back on for an episode.
Yay, I'm glad to be here with you.
Steve and I were talking about my plans because I'm recording at 6 also, and we're doing this at 5. Well, we were supposed to start at 5:15, but I said, well, the first one's with Richard, and he was like, well, that's going to go long. I said, yep.
Give him a finger for me, would you?
I sure will.
All right. Well, by the way, all I'm seeing right now is you. And
what?
I feel like the audience should be seeing my gorgeous face too.
Oh, I've got you on my screen.
You're
being recorded. Yeah, that's
okay.
your
That's
view.
all I care about.
You go up and change the view so you can see you
right.
too. Okay. All right. So anyway, sorry folks that Richard doesn't know how to Zoom.
Here I am.
Okay, good. So we're going to use a quote as a starting point and then sort of work backwards is what we just finished talking about. This is from a blog post called Childcare versus Daycare, 12 ECE experts on why words matter. I couldn't find an original date of publication on this, but it's from
about a year
Moment
ago.
Path blog. Yeah, momentpath.blog. Or .com/blog. So anyway, this has been coming up for me a lot. And so after some Facebook posts the other day where Richard and I both were having similar conversations with our folks who like us. I don't want to say followers. You have followers. I have folks who like me.
Nobody likes me. They just read my stuff.
That's not what I meant. So the quote we're going to start with, because we have to stay on track, is, and this is from you in the article or the blog post, the pendulum, and that's referring to the pendulum between what we're going to call ourselves as a field, which we'll get to. The pendulum needs to come back to a healthier point in the middle in which we don't get so hung up on terminology and instead focus our attentions on the underlying systemic issues to which those terms refer. And again, the article, Childcare versus Daycare.
Yeah. Whoever said that was brilliant.
Right? We should find him. Get him on the show.
Yes.
So what? Where are we starting with this? I guess I can just talk about why this is resonating with me right now. And unless you want
to talk about life in 2020?
Yeah. Do you want to go further back first?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, let me just say, I don't know what year you got into this field, but for me, it was late 80s.
1990.
Okay. So about the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And, I was so young, but back then, that's the first time I heard someone say very angrily, don't call it daycare. Mm-hmm. It's childcare. We don't take care of days. We take care of children. Mm-hmm. And now here we are 4 decades later, and I'm still hearing that same chestnut. And by the way, I'm not I want to be really clear. I don't want to disrespect anyone who says that. Some of my dearest readers of Zen and the Art of Early Childhood Education literally just posted those words, and others went yay and and all that. So I'm not dissing them, mm-hmm. but that argument is like, I was thinking about this afterwards. It's like, I don't know if this is going to make any sense. It's like 2 people treading water and splashing water in each other's face and not realizing that there's sharks circling under.
Yeah.
I don't think it actually, I think that words matter, and I think that words don't matter.
Okay.
I could make both cases. But in this case, having been in this field for now coming on 40 years, it's not been my experience that it matters if we call it childcare or daycare. People will say, well, it matters because then the rest of the world will treat us with respect. And the point of my quote was, no, they won't, unless you get at the systemic issues that undergird our field and the greater society in which the field exists. Mm-hmm. You can call it pink pajamas, and it's not going to get you more funding or more respect or higher wages.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So I just wanted to put that out there.
Yeah. So I don't, maybe I do disagree. I understand what you're saying. I agree with your larger point, I think. But and I'm right now I'm speaking internally. So of the people who are doing the work, I agree that what we call ourselves doesn't matter to the outside world. Like, I don't think we're going to change their view of us as a profession or as deserving of respect because we demand they use a certain word when they talk to us. And that's a change for me. I didn't always think that way. I had somebody, so what started this is a post. It's actually someone else's Twitter, whose name I can't remember, tweet that I posted on my Facebook page, the nerd page, that said something like, it shouldn't be insulting to be called childcare. And one of the things that came up in a comment was, it does because we need to get this is a great big paraphrase. We need to get politicians on our side. And to that I say, no, I think the push for calling ourselves early childhood education has damaged has worked against what we wanted to get attention from politicians and policymakers, because now they're so focused on education and they get their information from snippets. They aren't experts. So they hear education, their mental connection is elementary school. And so I think that's contributing to the academic push down that sort of deprofessionalizes us, because we're not standing up for the best, how we know children really learn and what they need during that age.
Right. So here's what I think I'm hearing you say. It has maybe increased the ability for those politicians who tend to be primarily male to better access our field's value and perhaps consider greater funding, but who gets hurt in the process are the young children in our care, who are getting far less than what research tells us they need.
Yeah. So I don't feel like it has the effect we think it has on the outside forces that direct our work. Of course, or affect our work is the word I'm looking for. But I do think that internally, amongst ourselves as people who spend our days with young children in whatever setting you want to say, when we can't even agree that there's value to caring and that it's not an insult to say childcare, and that the custodial care is so important also. And I hesitate to even just tie that word custodial care on there, because that
word, I cringe.
Yes, me too.
Custodial.
What?
I don't cringe because of care. I cringe.
Custodial. Yes. Yeah. So I feel like we're fighting so hard for outsiders' respect when we don't have respect for the people who work the next shift. I'm the 9 o'clock person. That 3 o'clock person comes in. She's just doing childcare. I'm here from 9 to 11, so I'm teaching. We can't even agree amongst ourselves of the value of the work. So I don't think that we're going to be able to have an effect on. Not that we shouldn't keep trying to advocate for our work. I'm going to just keep talking in circles here, but on this particular topic, I'm all worked up about it, as we talked about before the recording, but for different reasons than have been presented, like in these Facebook comments and things that we had this week.
Well, and Carol Garbadin Murray's upcoming book, The Pedagogy of Care, which we just recently did a part one. What is it?
The revolution begins when that book comes out.
Yes. So we recently did a part one nerd podcast, and we're about to record part two with her in a couple of days.
Yeah.
I felt so emboldened by that. And like a weight was lifted off of my shoulders, as I said in that last podcast. And so I feel more than ever justified and validated in saying, I am proudly a caregiver. There's nothing more important in those first 5 years, and perhaps throughout life, than care. And out of that care, according to Carol, comes education. It's a subset of the care.
Yeah.
So that makes this particular discussion, it makes me feel even more passionate.
Yeah.
And it makes me feel sad. Like, for example, I just read So you shared that tweet, and then I shared it onto my Zen page.
Mm-hmm.
You have your sets of people who commented, and then I had mine, and I was
Yeah.
just reading through my comments to prepare for this podcast. And one of the women said, and again, I'm not dissing her at all. She said, I am a teacher. I am not a caregiver. I got an associate's degree. I got a bachelor's degree.
Yeah.
I worked hard. I paid a lot of money for those.
Yeah.
And I am part of the education community. And on one hand, I was like, okay, you go, girl. That's awesome. On the other hand, aren't we missing the primary gift we are to the world and to our economy? Because the other thing is that we've worked in my 40 years in the field. I'm just going to start saying 40 from now on. I'm
Okay.
rounding.
I just won't release this for a few years, and then it'll be.
There you go. No, I never claimed to be good at math, so no. We've worked so hard to want ourselves to be included in the K through 12 world, right? And we wanted to be seen as part of the educational journey of children. And yet at the same time, we've also held strong to the fact that we are uniquely different. Children are at a uniquely different place developmentally in their first 5 years than in their elementary years. Mm-hmm. And so therefore, their needs are uniquely different. And so I'm talking in circles too, because on one hand, I want to be proud of being a teacher and starting them on their journey. And certainly we can't leave this podcast without saying that everyone out there working with young children deserves far worthier wages than they're getting.
Absolutely.
And that the push towards wanting to call ourselves teachers rather than caregivers in part comes from that, because we see our elementary and secondary colleagues and how much, much more money they're making than us. So I get that, and I would never want to hinder that work at all. But on the other hand, our contribution is so uniquely different, and the way we need to go about our jobs and the skill sets and dispositions we need are uniquely different from our elementary and secondary colleagues.
Yeah, and I see both sides of that, because I had some of that on my in my comments too, that I went to school and I have put all this work into accreditation and getting my degrees and those kinds of things. So I started the field when I was 19, when I didn't know, and I had already sort of dropped out of my first try at college. I didn't even know that was a field that could be studied. Right. So I worked the first 20 years of my career without a degree, not without professional knowledge and expertise and learning, because I read and I learned and I went to things and I tried. So I felt very competent to do that. And the first time someone suggested that I needed a piece of paper to prove that I could do what I had already been doing pretty well, there was a lot for me to work through. But the bottom line was I was pushed out of the field until I started back towards working on my degree. I spent most of my 40s working full time and going to school, and now I have a master's degree. I'm proud of that work. I do feel validated now because I have some letters behind my name, or I feel like I have to be less defensive about my skill, my professionalism, or whatever. But in those classes, care was never discussed. The value of the daily interactions, the routines, I'm going to say it again, but I'm going to do the air quotes, the custodial aspects that get dismissed were not.
And the relationships.
And the relationships were not discussed. It was all about content. And quite frankly, a lot of it was elementary ed, because early childhood programs are being absorbed by LED programs all over the place. So, and I was a director of a center that worked to get accreditation. So I know that those are hard things to do. But I think I had to let go of my ego and say, all of those words I was demanding people use about me were about me. And I want to be about the children who are here with me, and the families that they come from, and the other adults who are providing for them. And that was a shift for me. And so since then, I'll be honest, daycare still makes me cringe, but I need to keep refocusing that it's about what's actually happening with children and not about the words that we use to describe it.
Yeah. You know, again, we keep reiterating and sort of revalidating each other's points of view here, which is always lovely to not ever to talk with someone who never disagrees with you. But
I kind of disagreed with you at the beginning.
Oh, that's not cool.
But it was just a baby disagree.
Okay.
Okay. Anyway.
Well, see, again, part of me is like, you go, girl. That's awesome. I'm glad you know, are like that, self-actualized, that you came to that realization. But then there's another part of me, the part that mentioned the sharks swimming around at the bottom down there, that, you know, we're up on this, most early educators are up on that surface trying to handle the waves and not really realizing the source of the waves.
Mm-hmm.
So what am I saying? My point is, in responding to what you just said, is that yes, part of it is about our egos and letting that go and all that. But part of it is also realizing the patriarchal context in which your ego exists and that you can't be faulted for. And there's a part of me that wants to say to you, there's nothing you need to let go of. There's nothing you need to heal. You were never broken to begin with.
Did I say I was broken? I just felt like I was wrong. Did I say I was broken?
No, I was.
Oh, okay.
All right. Taking liberties.
Yeah, you're calling me broken.
Well, no, but my point is.
Just go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, there's 10 jokes. Just one.
Yeah.
No, but that was like in the early 2000s, or when was that NAEYC? Don't get us started on NAEYC.
Right. Whole other episode.
I literally just submitted our college's accreditation annual report 2 hours ago. Mm-hmm. And
I'm sorry, and congratulations.
Oh my goodness. But anyway, when they came out with that thing, whatever year that was in the 2000s, all early childhood lead teachers will have bachelor's degrees by 2020 or whatever.
Yeah.
Crazy. And then everyone lost their shit over that. You know, that was one of the first signals to me that this ship is not being steered by, you know, and again, it's difficult to not make a broad generalization, but people who tend to value and understand caring, which tend to be females.
Right.
Like, what is that about? And then that thrust us into this world of data gathering and all the busy work that takes us away from building relationships and caring. And I don't know, to me, there's a much larger systemic societal issue that's undergirding this whole thing, that regardless of what we call ourselves, unless we deal with that, unless we get more women in positions of power in our government, it doesn't matter what we call ourselves.
Right. Yeah. Sorry, I was just missing Elizabeth Warren for a minute. So here's something else that occurred to me kind of as we've been talking. And maybe this is going to lead away from the discussion of the language and back to more of a topic I wish Carol was here for. But so also for this, I just started teaching a new 8-week course, and this week we're talking about, it's just intro to early childhood education, the course. So this week we're kind of hitting basics about what could you do with that kind of a degree. But next week is theorists and the history. And so I've been rereading the theorists, and I watched the video that you sent me, which is going to be a guest lecture in the class. Yes, thank you. But so much of what is sort of named by those theorists falls more into care than it does education. I mean, of course, they're talking about how children learn, but it's also relationships and being social and the needs, people's needs being met. I just noticed a pattern that I hadn't noticed before, where a lot of that really tends more towards how we actually are interacting with children than the things that we plan to help them learn, the activities and the lesson plans and all of that stuff.
And where that takes me to, in my thinking, is kind of my next point of fear, which is universal pre-K.
Oh,
right?
Hurts my heart, hurts my head.
Well, but let's say why for a minute, because there's a
Yeah.
lot of people who think it's a wonderful thing and are
Right.
very for it, right? So, you know, please God, this podcast is being recorded the week before our presidential election, and we hope that it's going to go in a direction.
Yeah. Days before the election.
And we hope that it's going to go in a direction such that the president for the next 4 years values early childhood education and wants to fund it. And one of those candidates, Joe Biden, says that one of the ways he would do that if he were the president, see how careful I'm trying to be here, is through universal pre-kindergarten.
Right.
And people get really excited and they go, yay, funding for early childhood. That's awesome.
Yes. In fact, in one speech, he said, and I'm not talking about just daycare.
Right. And that kind of gets to the point of
won't release till after we voted. So, which
is who's going to decide what that looks like and how we define quality early childhood education? Yeah. Men.
Yep.
They're going to create the evaluation tools that decide what quality universal pre-K looks like. And that scares the hell out of me because it is not going to go the way of pedagogy of care.
Right. And I mean, this is a whole other topic, but you know, his wife is a very accomplished educator, very well known, well respected, but not in early childhood. Right. So I have some nervousness about that too. But here, so I said this the very first time I was ever on a podcast with Jeff Johnson and Lisa Murphy. I think that we just got so grateful when people started saying universal pre-K. We were so grateful to be in the boat that we became very worried about falling, being pushed out of the boat. And we just went along with what they were saying. Okay, universal pre-K, yes, let's do that. Let's make it part of the public school system and then we'll be respected. And instead of thinking, is that really what 4-year-olds need and what we know about how they learn, and how maybe the conversation should be something different.
Yep. I agree.
It scares me.
Now, I'm also, it scares me. All of these things. They seem on the surface. Again, I just keep going to this sort of surface and depth look metaphor. I don't know why. But they seem on the surface. Call me a teacher. Give me universal pre-K. They seem like positives. But when you've been in this long enough and you've had time to look at things more deeply, at least for me anyway, they produce fear in me, not excitement.
Yeah.
But the other thing, I know our time is
got some time.
Okay. Well, I know you wanted to get to now this conversation in the context of 2020.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. I did. Yeah. Well, so this has come up. Like I said, it's been sort of an ongoing theme for me. It's always been in my mind, the language that we use, but especially since we have been in this COVID era, there seems to be a lot more, and I see it on social media. I don't really talk to people anymore, so I see on social media a lot of this sort of infighting, and it's, the childcare providers, the early educators who've been doing what they always do as safely as they can during the whole time. And then there came this conversation about, should we open schools? And the argument was mostly economic. Families have to get back to work, so we need our schools open. And, elementary school teachers were so offended by the idea that they could be sort of included in that childcare conversation. That was upsetting to me.
Well, what we have in common with them is none of us want to be called babysitters.
Yeah.
As if, by the way, that's a bad thing.
I know. If Carol was here, that's what she'd say.
Right. But that was, I think, the knee-jerk reaction, right, of the elementary and upper teachers was, we're not here just to house your children and take care of them. We've gotten all these degrees and done all these things because we're here to educate them. And there's a whole other conversation as a society we need to have about overhauling our educational system and redefining what those 12 years even look like and what
Mm-hmm.
their purpose is in the modern world.
Right.
But that said, I understood why the teachers were feeling disrespected, but I also understood why the caregivers who were open during that time,
Mm-hmm.
and getting paid bupkis and not being called essential workers and all that were also offended.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't know what the solution is, but my heart went out to, I had empathy for
Both sides.
yeah.
Yeah. I had more empathy for the early childhood sides. But I had perspective taking ability, I guess, for the which I think is a little bit different for the teachers who were angry about that. Oh, it's gone. Whatever the next thing was. I think part of the conversation in this specific blog post about daycare versus childcare was that we don't care for days, and it puts the focus on the wrong thing. But I think the same argument could be made for early childhood education. The focus then is on education, which sort of skips the humanity and the reality of being in daily life with children as young as we are with them. So I don't know where that goes, but that also was a note that I had written down about the language.
Well, and again, just to remind your viewers and listeners and whatnot, I said this on an earlier podcast, but the whole concept behind Head Start in 1962, what would give children a head start, was not academic preparedness.
Mm-hmm.
It was practicing their social and emotional skill
Mm-hmm.
development.
Mm-hmm.
That's what was going to give them a head start.
Right.
Was,
And addressing some of the sort of family and community issues that were putting barriers up for those children.
right. So, in the business world, you might call those the soft skills,
Mm-hmm.
right? And early
Yeah.
childhood education, math and science and language and literacy are
Mm-hmm.
sort of the hard skills. But that's patriarchal in nature, right?
Mm-hmm.
A society that values the hard skills over the soft skills,
Right.
because soft skills tend to be under the umbrella of females.
Right.
But that was the whole nature of our field, or at least that subset of Head Start.
Mm-hmm.
That was the brilliance of that research. That's what young children need, is support for their social and emotional development.
Mm-hmm.
So another way of saying it is they need to be cared for and learn how to be a caring human being. And that's what will have them ready for kindergarten and beyond.
Right. And not because you have a theme for a week that is, I care for others.
Yes. Tune into
a future episode that we're recording in a couple days.
Themes.
Yeah. Okay. Do you have any parting shots? I probably do need to wrap up since someone else is coming on at 6.
Oh,
I know. This is way more fun.
Well, I would just say that, I don't think there is one right answer here. Yeah. I think, much like everything we say in early childhood, process versus product. The process we had in this conversation, to me, is what's valuable. The process people will have as they consider what they've heard us say is what's valuable. Whatever they'll then comment on the nerd page or my page, and then read each other's thoughts on it. That's what's valuable. There is no one right answer or one perfect solution to hit on. So I don't know. That's as close to wisdom as I can get.
Yeah. Yeah. This has been one big long opinion piece. Now do with it what you will. Right. All right. Well, I should have been making a list of all the other things we said. That's a whole other episode for me. All right. Well, thanks, Richard. It's good to talk to you, and I will see you again in a couple of days to record. Thanks, everyone, for listening. Bye.